total number of residential lots that were approved?
Put all that together for the mayor, city,
State of the city.
address, and so once we have that, I'll send that to the commission.
She'll be fine.
Yeah, I've
Well,
got
that's a lot. I can't believe that. I should be swimming in the mic.
It was busy.
Yeah, super.
Got it? Yep. All right, call to order for the February 23rd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Announcements?
Yes, so the first off is, since we forgot to add it to the new business, a planning commission will need to make a motion to have the election of officers. I have to get in with announcements and the approval of minutes. We had one filed sub, the Ashley Commercial Park sub, that was reviewed last month. They were very quick on getting the changes, any changes that were required, and we were filing it. You'll see sitting in front of you when you got here, this long list of annexation, land use rezoning, code amendments. These are all planning items that were approved this year, this past year, excuse me, 2022. Just for information only, the planning office had a pretty good year. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask questions. Part of this will be presented to the mayor as part of his State of the City address. So other than that, that is all the announcements.
Oh, and just one more. Starbucks is looking to be opening on Monday potentially because they're finishing up the remodels. I know a lot of people are being anxious about them opening back up. But one of the cool things that we got out of that was they wanted an extra curb cut, and but we were able to get the sidewalk address that never got put in during the original development. So that's continuing out the walkability of that area. So that's some of the things we're trying to do from a planning perspective, is also do slight corrections as we move through approvals and stuff.
Clarification, they wanted a curb cut, was it on the boulevard?
No, it's on Commons Drive. It's the
Oh, okay.
it's the private drive that's over there.
All right. Let's move on to the approval of minutes. Everybody had the meeting minutes from the January 26th meeting.
You want to do the election of officers first? When do you want to do that?
We're gonna,
We need to amend the agenda. Where do you want to put it?
I think we talked about just having that on new business. City attorney, Mr. City Attorney, that's fine?
No.
All right.
So, but you need an emotion to amend the agenda, correct?
Yes, for once new business comes up.
Okay, fair enough.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
we have,
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those say no? No, okay. Approval of the meeting minutes for January 26th. We'll now request a motion to revise the order of business for election of officers.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Do we have some nominations?
Which one are we starting off with first?
Let's start off with chairman.
You want to start that chair quick? Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to nominate Craig Johnson as chairman for the coming year.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations,
condolences.
Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson. Moving on, do we have any nominations for vice chair?
Yes, I make a motion to nominate Commissioner Wennick for vice chair.
Okay,
Mary, do you want to accept that?
I'll accept.
okay, very good. Second? Okay, we have a second, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No oppositions, Mary. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
And our final nomination for secretary.
motion to nominate Hall Ramsey for the coming year.
That's what he gets. Second.
Okay,
You did
Have a
speak with him,
motion and a
right, though,
second.
Mike? You said that you did, so we're not hanging
Yeah,
out.
no,
So,
no, no.
he couldn't be here tonight.
he did volunteer.
Okay, I was making sure.
Stay on.
Fair enough.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Excellent, okay, so,
Can we move around?
We start doing musical chairs.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
so. You may now have the gavel.
Be sure to grab your
Nameplate?
nameplate.
Scott.
Thank you. Now,
That's yours.
you sign, you wanna take it? Yes.
Grab that,
Yes.
Scott. I have to get new nameplates cut, everything, expense. Take it out of our salary.
We,
You did address this chair.
yeah.
Since we approved.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
Yes.
Why don't you go sign
No,
it?
and if you
Okay.
put it up, you just shoot across
I
the
know,
room.
it'll do it later.
We can't see you over there on the screen.
So I don't have any, well, thank you for the nomination, fellow commissioners, I appreciate it. So welcome to the first regular scheduled meeting of my chairmanship for February 23rd. I do not have any public comment cards. You didn't pick them up and take them with you, did Scott? Did you have any?
No, sir, I did
Okay.
not.
So there's no public comment cards on non-agenda items. I will now open the public hearing. Seeing there's no old business, we'll move into no new business. Mr. Director, Scott Grammer, please.
So I'll take the first one, Jason. I'm going to let Jason take the other two, just because this one has been requested for deferral till next month. And the request is for deferral so that it's a public deferral, and those that came into this would know that the applicant is requesting to come back on March 23rd to make some modifications and changes to the plat.
Did you get a letter from the applicant or his representative for the deferral?
There is a letter, it's in your packet.
Oh, very good, thank you. Didn't make you see that. Okay, seeing that, we will move on to item number 2, which is the
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry,
But if
Mr.
you
Chair,
pull-
we'll need a motion to defer that.
why would we do that?
If,
If he
if it came to
requested-
staff, is, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, that's a good question.
They pulled it down.
Could we have,
They didn't
Some
pull it
direction
off the
from the
agenda, it's still on the agenda. So to pull it down off, if we would have pulled it down, then they would have had to re-advertise for next month.
So we're voting to accept the deferral?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to
Second.
accept the,
Okay. We have a motion on the table and a second for the deferral, or accept the deferral for the Hallher subdivision, ETJ, pending other staff comments. Please give affirmation in the yes or the no.
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Passes. Let's go to number 2, which is Mid-South Boring Site Plan.
Okay, Commissioners, at the subcommittee, we showed this to you. This is a site plan on Lot 4 of Tri-Victus subdivision, address of 205 Murphy Drive. It is a proposed 2,400 square foot warehouse / office for storing boring equipment, also requesting an 800 square foot canopy. You have the staff analysis in front of you. It is an I-1, so the only things reviewed within the site plan package is the site plan review and the landscape plan. Remember, industrial does not require commercial building design. So with that said, they've met everything we've asked. You'll see the various comments from utilities, fire department. They have met those comments. Our comments are contingent upon engineer review and approval of grading and drainage. This is a fairly significant hillside, but there's also been a lot of mining and done on the property adjacent to it that actually has gone into this property. We assume the building is going to be under 50 feet, but we just need to double check that it's going to be under 50 feet with a note on the site plan. waste disposal dumpster location will need to be added, but this will also, of course, be a commercial disposal, not municipal sanitation. Add a note on the site plan, storage of goods, equipment, supplies, or other materials must comply with 94-412B visual restrictions, which states all of that must be stored on the back 2/3 of the property. If you look at the site plan, the building itself and the approximate 96-foot turnaround radius of pavement is all further than 50% back on the property, so that should not be an issue for the storage of equipment. And there were no variances needed or requested, and that is our staff review for the site plan itself for the first item.
Excuse me, did you say that was a note on the site plan?
We're asking,
We're asking for it to be added as a note,
Oh, okay.
the number 4.
Okay.
Does that have to be behind a fence?
It does want it stored behind a fence. We are, I'll probably talk with Scott some more on this. I think it is a little confusing because it talks about storage of goods. I believe what they are talking about is also construction vehicles. If the applicant representative here, he could maybe clarify a little bit for us.
State your name.
Mark Ritter with Holloway Engineering. Yes, he's gonna store his equipment mainly there, and he doesn't have any goods for sale, et cetera. And we provided a landscape hedge there in front, an Elaeagnus hedge, which, if you know Elaeagnus, it'll grow 20 feet in 2 years. So that should be sufficient to shield the equipment from the general public going down Murphy.
I believe the question was, are you intending on erecting a fence to meet the code, or is that still subject to discussion?
He really wasn't, from my understanding, but if you're gonna require one, he'll do one.
Yeah, the section 412B does, for the storage of goods in the industrial, does require a fence, a 6-foot fence.
Right, and now he has
So-
one at the front, but not necessarily surrounding
Yeah.
the property.
And that may be a question for commissioners if it needs to come back for a variance. This is, if you look at the site plan itself, it is far enough off the road. A lot of times, you'll see the buildings up fairly close to the road, and then the fence is behind, so it's, 100 feet off. This is approximately 300 feet back and up a hill. The storage, I assume, will be under the awning area and just behind?
Yes, to keep from, vandalism, et cetera, he's gonna store as much of it as possible in the building. And all of the mature trees on the property will remain. He plans to just cut in the drive and leave the trees, so that'll provide additional screening.
Are we marking this area of this 96-foot diameter, is it a no parking zone? How is that treated? The chief wanted
It's
that, is it?
fire department access turnaround.
Yeah, but what precludes somebody from parking in the area and then?
I've got a note, plat note, so, that's, I can't hardly put a fence around it. if
No,
that's what you mean.
my question is, should it be marked as a fire lane?
Yeah, it could be striped, et cetera.
I think that if equipment can be stored in that area, however he's gonna do it, does your owner understand that that's to be kept clear?
No, he absolutely does. That was one of the comments from the captain.
And one of the things that we might look at on the landscape plan is possibly having them add in all existing foliage that's on the property that's going to be undisturbed, such as existing tree, which you mentioned. You didn't designate that there's any existing trees on the, which
I
when we
did
get to
not.
that, we can talk about that.
We can add that, but there's multiple mature growth trees.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Linus.
So is that the way, on the transmittal letter, it said the intent was to preserve as many trees as possible. So
Yes.
the way that we'll do that is have that as a condition of the approval, or that, do we designate a certain area, amount of trees? What?
Well, I would just designate that as a condition by the commissioners on the landscape plan when we get to it, that they add in on the landscape plan, if you're willing to approve it without it being shown that way.
Yeah, the current item before us is the site plan.
Sorry.
And Chief, so there was not any comment from the fire department of requiring any type of striping?
No.
Fire zone or anything like that, so if somebody's.
That
parked there
wasn't a
or-
comment.
Okay. Well, I'm sure they're not necessarily worried about turning around, dressing the fire, they're gonna put their apparatus where necessary, but maybe leaving. I don't know. Okay, well, if he's happy with it.
Chief is,
Sir?
chief is standing.
Oh, hey, Chief. You're right behind him.
I know, I'm
I'm
tiny, thank you, I appreciate that. I was just gonna say,
Do you want it striped?
it's just kinda like the same as a cul-de-sac, like,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
just kind of like in good faith, he knows that's a turnaround, so there's no storm or anything, as long as it's not like a designated parking spot in that area or whatever. It's,
Well, I guess my concern here a little bit is, it's within, it meets the requirement to store equipment there.
right,
Okay, so he can store it, puts up a fence, we can discuss that more. So if he puts equipment there, then you won't have access to turn around.
right, and that's, I mean, it's too long to, we have to have some kind of turnaround access at that length, so. I mean, he can strap it, if it becomes a problem, we can make him strap it.
Right, and also if fire notices that there's equipment in there at any time, we can always write a notice to them from code enforcement standpoint, referring back to the plat requirements, and then just escalate it as necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think one thing that concerns me on here is there's no designation on the site plan of where the equipment is gonna be stored.
Does someone know where the line is? Where is the line here, Mark, do you know? The thirds to two-thirds? We just need it demarked, how about that?
Yeah.
Can you mark
That'd
it
be
where
fine.
in accordance with the code
Yeah,
requirements?
And then that way, the client will know exactly what his parameters are.
Yeah, and where he is. and-
But I didn't know that that was a requirement of the site plan, to show where he's gonna store equipment, and what kind of equipment, et cetera. That could
I
get
think the
pretty
requirement,
lengthy.
yeah, I think the requirement of the code was that it has to be at a certain location.
Well, so it talks about it being in the back 2/3 of the lot. So when you're looking at this property, you know, you have 768 feet on one side and 552. The building itself is 400, almost 500 feet back from Murphy Drive, which clearly puts it in the back 2/3. I believe Mr. Redder said that they intend to store most of their equipment inside. I will say if they do, they will need to, if they do storage outside, then they will need the fence, and any stacks of any equipment, boring, piping, or whatnot would have to be under 6 feet. And that's part of that visual restrictions in section 412.
And
So
if
would
they're
we-
asking for what's on the landscaping plan, then that's gonna require variance. Otherwise, we're gonna have, if they're parking outside, it's gotta be fenced.
Well,
We
I
need to know
thought
where it
that
is.
perhaps landscape screening would qualify also as a fence. We're talking about screening fence, what I understand. So it would seem that landscape screening would also be applicable.
So is there a solution for this variance issue?
I think whatever, I don't know if this client, if he's here, what his intent of this area is. He seems like my inference is that he's wanting the flexibility to store equipment there, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So can we, as a condition, have a plat note then that indicates if there is storage, what the conditions are, or would that interfere in the development of the site the way they want it?
You can certainly do that.
I think to get through here, Mark, is that however, whatever he's deciding to do, if he puts, whatever the function of that is, he'd have to come back at that point in time, if that's decided, or maybe he doesn't, for that matter.
Sure.
But I think, staff is telling us a fence is required. And I don't think the variance is necessarily a big deal, but it's not, you didn't give notice, and, so we're kinda stuck with, if we wanna move it
I
forward.
mean, we can add a fence. Sure, if it's a staff requirement.
So commissioners, if you'd like, I can read directly from the code that we're referencing, 94-412B, visual restrictions. All permitted uses and accessory activities shall be confined within completely enclosed buildings with the exception of off-street parking spaces, off-street loading berths, accessory or fuel storage, and employee recreational facilities. In addition, no goods, equipment, supplies, or other materials shall be stored in the open except on the rear 2/3 of any lot, and then only when such open storage is no higher than 6 feet and is fenced with a screening fence at least 6 feet high.
So I'd make a move, we move that to the plat.
Okay.
Yeah.
That way your owner completely understands and
Yeah,
there's
that
no,
works.
there's no discrepancy.
Sure.
Is that okay, Mark?
Yeah.
Good catch.
And that also hopefully would alleviate the fire turning radius too.
Would help.
Equipment that's gonna be parked and stored is gonna be in a specific location, and he knows that it's not supposed to be out there in front.
That's right.
Commissioner Fisher, if you look on the plan, there is a note on the site plan that's gonna remain where it talks about no equipment storage within, the turnaround area or access driveway. It's right there. It kinda gets hidden in a little bit with the contours.
Okay.
I see. Okay. I was expecting it over here.
We can add to the notes if that makes you like that. Would that be a problem, just adding that same comment to the notes, the
Would not
turnaround?
be a problem at all.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the site plan, subject to all commissioner comments, staff comments, and whoever else needs to be commenting on it.
Yep.
Second.
Did I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in the affirmative, please say yes.
Yes.
All those in denial, say no. Motion passes. Now on to the proposed landscape plan.
So you'll see up on the screen, and also in your packet, the landscape plan for this. Being that this is in a industrial area, the landscape plan, is not as stringent. They have put trees up along the street frontage, which is very common. They have a pretty wide drive to allow trucks in and out. And then they also have added the screening hedge, so that more than meets the landscape requirements for an industrial area. I think one comment we've talked about and we would like to see is just have a cloud of notes of undisturbed areas, so we know where the trees are going to be remaining. With the intent, obviously, as I said, the applicant intends to only take out as trees as needed for their drive.
Questions?
I do have a question. It's
Fisher.
more, I think, of staff. In the past, we have landscaping plans. When there's irrigation, we've always had a plan in there that shows spray radius. In this one, we don't have anything like that. We've got an awful lot of open space. Is that gonna be grass? Is it gonna be native? What's it gonna be? Don't know.
It would be untouched, and that speaks to the note that we're gonna add the areas that would be, where the trees would be preserved, and any undergrowth that's there, they won't move that.
Just gonna leave it natural.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't require any irrigation.
So, Mr. Commissioner, there is a note that says irrigation notes, which they have for drip irrigation on any planted landscape. And you're seeing that more now rather than radii because it's cheaper and less expensive to do drip irrigation than spray irrigation.
I understand that, but again, it seems like we're getting a little away from what we've seen in the past on it. And the only other comment I would have on that screening, that is an invasive plant that a lot of people don't want around anymore, almost like privet. As long as they're aware that that stuff can spread and grow.
yeah.
Mr. Drummer, is spray radii and that type of detailed information required on a landscape plan? I think not, although it's been provided.
It's been provided, I'd have to go back into the ordinance and see, I can look, but,
I was just curious, so that's fine. Those things get moved around quite a bit during construction.
I was
Very
gonna
rarely
say
does
that
a site
in the
plan
past, the
end
ones
up-
that we provided,
where
but
the head
never
shows,
been built
right.
like that.
Yeah, it's,
You know.
they're never built like that usually. Good intent. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the landscape plan, subject to staff review and approval for maximum tree preservation.
Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second for the Mid-South Boring site plan. All those in favor with the affirmative, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes. Item number 3, the NCS expansion site plan. Mr. Grummer, or Mr. Lyons, whoever's handling
Okay.
that for us.
All right, Commissioners, this is site plan and landscape plan for NCS Edition Lot 1, located along Lewis Nelson Drive, 12,300 Lewis Nelson Drive to be more specific. It is directly across from the cold storage facility that recently expanded as well. There is an existing 12,000 square foot office warehouse on this property. The applicant is proposing a new 40,000 square foot warehouse building expansion within the existing industrial park. See all the comments. Of course, some of this is going to be contingent on approval of the grading and drainage plans by the city engineer with the 2 drainage ponds. The fire department comments, I have added the note that a fire hydrant was added on the site plan to the northwest corner near the existing drive. That was a request of Fire Marshal Eaton. Public Works has their comments for inspection on pipe and driveway aprons. You'll see the comments from the utilities. Our staff comment that seems to be outstanding right now, it is not a big thing in the grand scheme, is the parking requirements in the industrial park. Just requires 1 space per employee, 1 space per vehicle connected to the business. We do not have that handy at this time. If Mr. Rutter has that, that'd be great. They are not a very big business.
I do not know that off the top of my head, but they were talking about like 3 or 4 employees.
Yeah. I believe the current facility only has about maybe 5 or 6 employees, and
right.
they have 3 employees that are working at a facility that they lease up in Conway, that I believe that I've heard they will be coming down to this facility. So I believe that puts them around 8 to 10 roughly, and they have 22 parking spots, which more than meets the minimum requirements.
Yes. And their intent is to move all of their regional warehousing to this location, which I think is fantastic.
Commissioners, if you remember from the initial view on the subcommittee, they did have a curb cut onto Victory Lane. That has been removed. If that may come out at a later date if they were to get approval or sought to seek it from Pulaski County School District, but at this time, it was I think time constraints. They still meet all the requirements. They'll have a new curb cut more for the bigger trucks, the semis, for the loading berths on the south side. And all of the traffic will, of course, enter and exit onto Lewis Nelson Drive and then down to Carnahan. So much like what they've already been doing. So again, 40,000 square foot building expansion, and you'll see that they have roughly 3 detention ponds that will, of course, need to be, the designs and everything else will need to be approved by the city engineer prior to final approval. That's all of our comments on the site plan portion.
Could you confirm the number required for handicap? Is it still staying at 1 if we add?
I believe handicap parking requirements are 5% of the parking, so that would put it at 1. If requested, they could add a second if needed, but I believe typical handicap is 5%, which would be 1 with 22 spots.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, I know I'd like a little bit better delineation of that property. It's a little odd because we have the right of way and then that buffer, and that's owned by the school. You have grading activities that are right up against it, and I know that's all grown up, or it's screened adequately from the school. It's growth. maybe we can delineate that in some fashion, on the site plan, so our contractor understands that that's an area that that he doesn't own.
Sure, sure.
Just, or note say this.
Well, and that was one of
property's
the
owned by
issues
Maumelle.
with the driveway cut over to Victory Lane was that strip is actually a platted non-clearing buffer. So they're not allowed to take any trees out of that strip at
Yeah,
all.
but that note's not carried over to this site plan.
No.
So,
So I'd like to add that.
Okay.
So make sure that he knows he can't get in the area. Because it could, when you go out there, it looks a little, and especially when he gets there and he plots it, it'd be a little confusing to him, I think.
it'd
Go
probably
ahead,
just
Joe.
probably be beneficial, as you mentioned, probably put ownership on that parcel like you do on a plat, showing
Yeah, sure.
adjacent ownership as well as what it is.
You may want to require to put an orange fence all the way down the property line. I don't think the school.
Yeah, that's probably a good plan.
I think it could be sensitive to some.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it will be.
I mean, you're right to be there, but Tracos and things, and plus the frequency of traffic along that area too as well. Good phone call or two, I'm sure.
That's right.
Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion, please. For the site plan of NCS expansion site plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the NCS expansion site plan, proposed site plan.
I have a motion here, second.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor for the proposed site plan of NCS expansion site plan. So in the affirmative, please say yes.
Yes.
And then an aye will say no. Motion is approved. Let's hear the proposed landscape plan.
Okay, landscape plan, again, it's pretty straightforward. Being that this is industrial, street frontage is the main part of it. You will notice there is no new parking that faces any frontage. So all of the trees are screened up along Lewis Nelson and will be basically screening off as best it can the building itself. They've also added some screening up along the detention ponds on the east side. But overall, this plan meets the requirements of the industrial.
Thank you, Mr. Fine. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, may I add, as well as Commissioner Fisher's comment concerning the spray radii for irrigation. It does state in the ordinance that for irrigation plan with spray radii, but I do recall on many other landscape plans, it doesn't speak to drip irrigation in the ordinance, and we've allowed for notes of drip irrigation in lieu of spray radii. Just FYI, we've approved that in the past.
Yeah, we have, but this is also showing grass area,
Yes.
so that's not gonna be drip.
No, but it's also on a slope and it could be dripped at the top and trickle down. But I'm sure that they will irrigate it.
Of course, if commissioners would like to make request a modification to add spray radii, you can do that as well.
If staff doesn't, I know that gets changed. It comes across in a plan, but it's nothing, it gets changed. It's just part of the construction. So the industrial does not require irrigation, correct? I'm asking the question.
Well,
I think it does actually.
any landscaping does require irrigation, whether it's drip or spray radii. With the main proponent of, it's actually in our code that if the landscaping fails to be maintained, trees are dying, that it can become a code enforcement issue because it is a zoning, and they can be cited, and they will have to remedy any of those issues. So if a tree dies, they got to replace the tree. So it's not a put the trees in, let them die in a year, and they don't care anymore. It is for us to enforce it that if a tree dies or any of the landscaping becomes unkept, that they have to maintain it. So it is a requirement that they must maintain any landscaping that's put in.
Yeah, over the years, we've been sticklers for irrigation, trees, grass.
We enforced it on Kroger. They
Always.
went back in and did it.
Yeah, so,
That developer that was in there, whichever case, I don't know who the responsibility was there.
of course, then you get into the situation, we're not landscape people, And if you get into, like in Kroger's, there's some areas there that it's grown to the point where you can't see what may be coming. So that can be a little bit of a tricky issue. It looks good on paper when we approve it.
Do you want to require them to irrigate, Mr. Fisher, as far as adding a note?
I'm gonna leave that up to staff.
Very good, sir. Any other comments or questions? I'd like to hear a motion on the proposed landscape plan.
Motion to approve the landscape plan as presented.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second for the proposed landscape plan for the expansion, the NCS expansion. All those in the affirmative, please say yes.
Yes.
All those in the denial say no. Motion carries. The proposed landscape plan for NCS expansion is approved. I'd like to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
an item of new business I'd like to bring up that does not require a vote.
Is it just a comment, or does it require action? It doesn't require action?
It requires a
You may have
short
the floor for
discussion.
comment. It does
Okay.
require action?
No, it
Okay.
requires discussion.
Sure. You
Okay.
can comment.
We recently heard, this is about public hearing notices, and what we recently heard from the community is they don't understand what the process is, and they certainly like to have a process that works better to let them know what's happening. So when I talked to the director about how we could go about reviewing and possibly amending the various ordinances for which we conduct public hearings, he confirmed, first of all, that the commission has the authority to propose code amendments. So we can do that and initiate on our own. I'd like to see if there's a consensus to having placed on the next regular agenda the topic of improving the public notice process for increased transparency and effectiveness, plus appropriate allocation of notice responsibilities between the applicant and the staff. In any review that we would do, the director has also requested we consider expanding the typical notice process for planned unit developments to include a community meeting hosted by the developer/applicant. If we proceed with this, it's expected the process would require more than one meeting and could result in commission code recommendations being submitted to the council for consideration. It's further expected that there be meaningful outreach effort to residential neighborhoods and/or property owner associations. Before we could do something like this, we would actually, on our next agenda, have to have an action item, sort of lay out what the plan would be, probably do some research and discussion, have that come back for a public hearing. So the question is, do we want to allocate our time and the staff's time to go through this process to come up with better language and/or procedures?
Okay.
And since it wasn't on the agenda, my understanding is we really can't take action, but we could give a consensus to say, yes, we're interested in this and get started on the process.
Well, I think, and thank you for your comments. I think we put this on the subcommittee meeting. What I'd like to see is just in the circumference of our communities, our neighbors, North Little Rock and Little Rock is maybe just a little bit of a nice, too much engineer sometimes, but a nice little table and graph outlining what everybody else is doing. Are we aligning or are we not? I don't know that, if we are aligning, perhaps it's good we had an anomaly, but if we're not aligning, then I think that even brings up more question. But a public hearing will be required because it would require an ordinance change, so that would require a public
Right.
hearing, public notice. So that's automatically happen should we move something forward. But I think as a first step, I would like, before we decide we need to change something, is to see how we align with some of our other neighbors in our communities. And then from that point on, something may be glaring that needs to be addressed as the first step. And then that way it hones us in a little bit on perhaps our efforts rather than just, I don't think a whole global evaluation. It's a lot of time for staff too as well, and our time too, but just to see where we're at. Is that adequate enough as a good first step
Well,
for subcommittee?
I think so, because when I talked to the director, I said, I think it's very basic is to find out what's the state requirement, what's our requirement, what happens in communities our size in our area, and then look out how it can be improved, and maybe it can't be. But then also look at the process itself as far as who's responsible for doing what. Are we utilizing staff and city resources in the best way to have them putting up signs? You know, there's, I mean, for example, in this community, you have the developer send out the notices, and that's done in some places, but other places, that's very, you know, it's not done, but, no work can go into this by us, or really by the staff, unless we're in an open meeting and we say it's something we want to do, and you're right, I don't think we can even make the decision about if we want to proceed until we get some basic information.
And I think that's a fair request to staff, just to garner that and see where we're aligning or not aligning, and then to have action from that point and move forward. So I think the sign issue, for instance, I know we're paralleling to the crash site, is that, you know, where the sign goes and where we have a right to post signs is sometimes problematic. You know, the sign should have been up there at the entrance of the Momma Country Club, but if we put it up there, it's not on them, they would have just took it down. So
Right.
we're always faced with what we can do on the property itself and not be visually, you know, of course, the requirement of the public meeting. I've been in business a long time, and I have been requested at planning commissions to have a public meeting. So the commission directed the applicant, in my case, I was the applicant, to do it. So there was no choice in the matter. So and I think that we do have the right to do that.
And some cities codify that. And, you know, I would let the director speak more to this, because that wasn't something that I mean, I always think it's a good idea. I think anytime you're doing a project, as soon as it's announced, you know, the neighbors always think you're gonna be putting a prison there, or a drive-through restaurant with lots of traffic and noise at nighttime. People always think the worst. And in those communities where it's either the practice or it's a requirement, that the developer have an informal meeting, so it's more comfortable for people to attend in the neighborhood or the area, and they can hear about what's happening. It allays a lot of concerns that are not justified.
So Director Graham, what I'd like to see is just a table, not a succinct table, go through the requirements of the PUD regarding notification and see how we are aligning with our neighbors, and then we'll present that for discussion purposes at the next subcommittee meeting. We may carry it into a couple subcommittees without formal action here per se as we move forward, and that's what the subcommittee meeting is for.
So I guess I'll ask, because we can't take a vote on an item that wasn't on the agenda. Is there a consensus by the group we'd like to do more on this, even though we don't know for sure what more could be?
I
We'd like to explore.
directed the director to put us information, so I've taken that and,
Okay.
you know, I've directed him to do that. So
All right.
he'll have to,
Thank you.
he should comply. I think that he will.
And I believe that's the most appropriate way to handle it, is to discuss these issues in the subcommittee first.
Well, we just get bogged down. We have business here to move forward with applicants and things of that nature, and then and we have done ordinance changes, Dollar General, the screen, we've done several, Commissioner Landis through the years, of things we have changed as a result of things that came through that we really didn't care for or would like to see done different. So it's not an unusual water for us to wade in.
All right, well, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, I would say this, I've been on this commission 21 years, and the Crash deal was the first time
That's true.
that particular notification issue has ever come before the city.
I do think it was quite a little bit of an anomaly.
It was.
In my opinion. But it doesn't mean that we can't improve on it so that doesn't
Yeah.
occur at all. I don't want to be dismissive at all. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Landis. So we have a little bit left on our agenda. So we have city council liaison reports, and you're up, Ms. Landis.
All right, well, the council was busy as far as our work goes. They made appointments to the planning commission with a reappointment for Hall Ramsey and a new appointment for Tracy Gill. They approved resolutions for the proposed event center that included the conditional use permit and the preliminary development plan. And they had first reading on 3 ordinances: the annexation for the Ascent Development property, an amendment to a land use plan, an amendment to a zoning map, and then by resolution, they adopted for Cypress Bend at Maumelle Crossing.
Thank you, Ms. Landis. Mr. Smith, for February 21.
All right, well, they were not as busy, but still very busy. We had the second reading of ordinance 1085, annexation of land for the Ascent Development property. And there was no action required, and there was no discussion. They had the second reading of ordinance 1086, amending Maumelle land use plan. and there was no action required, of course, and no discussion. And the second reading of ordinance 1087, amending the Mall Mill zoning. And again, no action required and no discussion.
Very good. Next month, City Council liaison, Commissioner Fisher, March 6th, Commissioner Vice Chair Winnick, March 20th. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr.
Oh, sir, yes, Mr.
Mr.
Gerber, just a
Chair.
moment, please.
I just want to make and I apologize, just wanted to make the commissioners aware. So, of course, you've noticed that I've been growing out a little bit more hair. When you come back in next month, you may see less hair. So I'll be starting chemo treatments on Tuesday for prostate cancer. And so
We wish you well on that.
I appreciate that. So I may be losing my hair. I didn't want to scare you guys if I come in looking like Corey Pickard. I'm not the chief of police, of course.
We understand
no
that,
offense there, but
As I understand it, that has a very good success.
that's why haven't really been vocal about it, because I wanted to wait until we had a treatment plan. We have a treatment plan. The doctors are very positive about it and moving forward. So
Very good. We wish you the best with that.
thanks.
Wish you the best. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I did make the motion.
Oh, I have a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.